Actually, first of all, Tony, just tell us where we are.
Where we are at the moment is the site of Ashington Colliery. Used to be the biggest undersea pit in the 80s, because it was actually linked up with Linemouth pit, and used to produce loads of coal. At one stage it was doing 2 million tonnes a year.
That's a lot of coal.
A lot of coal.
So earlier we were talking about the difficulties of being unemployed and the way that sanctions work, and you've recently fallen foul of that. Just give us a quick narrative of what happened.
When I was unemployed, I was on £71.50 a week unemployment benefit, and I was getting £320 a month for my rent. My rent was £400, so obviously it's a bit out of pocket there. It was a huge struggle. It was basically counting the pennies, and to be quite honest, begging, borrowing, getting little bits of subsidies off parents and friends and that. And then I ended up getting sanctioned, and what happened there was I was handed a job in the job centre. I had things to do, help my parents out because a woman across the street had died, and I was helping move wardrobes and furniture. When I did get around to checking, within 2 days later, this job I was supposed to apply for, the date closing time for it was the night before, so I couldn't apply for it. When I went to the job centre, I told them what had happened, but I applied for other jobs, showed them the list, did the usual sign down, it was fine. But then the next week, on the Saturday, I received a letter telling me I'd been sanctioned for 6 months of getting no money, which obviously makes you panic, to say the least. I thought I would be homeless.
And what are the knock-on effects of having that happen to you, and the implications for you in terms of your ability to find employment?
Yeah, well, the irony about being sanctioned, and first of all, I'd like to say I think sanctioning should never happen, regardless what people do. This is people on the what you call the safety net. It's people on the lowest level, and they're really struggling. It's not easy to get by. But the effect it had on me was I had my own internet. I didn't have a TV, couldn't afford a TV. I didn't have a microwave, I haven't got a car. I was basically living at the basic minimum. But I had the internet to apply for jobs. And what happened, once I was sanctioned, I lost the internet. I couldn't pay for it. I went into debt, and my debt was passed to a credit agency, and to be quite honest, I'm still paying that debt off now. I couldn't apply for jobs from home. It made it awkward applying for jobs. I had to travel to apply for jobs. My phone line was cut off, obviously, so it made everything that bit more difficult. It made looking for a job actually harder, which was sort of not what the job centre were telling me they wanted to do. Yet they made life harder for me, generally.
And what do you think the intention from the government is of doing the sanctions?
I think the whole point of the government policy towards sanctions, I think they've got a very, I think it's partly stupidity. I think they think that, they do actually partly believe that people's got an easy life, they're just sitting around not looking for work, which is absolute nonsense. I think, 99.9% of people want a job. The policy behind it, I think the real thought behind it is that they're trying to save money. And I think as an undermining of the welfare system, they're trying to destroy the welfare system and shift money to private companies. I think when you see small companies, small private companies around the northeast who are actually doing the jobs of what the job centre do, there's lots of companies do, CVs, letter writing, and basically what's happening there is taxpayers' money is being funneled through the government policy straight through the unemployed into these companies to get them jobs that don't exist anywhere. I think it's a totally pointless exercise, and if I was really honest about it, it's a scam. It's just a large scam.
And one of the things you were saying to me before is that in the Ashington area, you think that probably the biggest employer now is Asda?
Yeah, Asda's probably the biggest employer. Since Alcan closed about 2 years ago, it leaves Asda, which can be rather depressing for some people. That's the best job you're going to get in this locality anyway.
And is the nature of those jobs at Asda that often they're 0-hour contracts or small contracts?
I don't know about 0-hour contracts, whether Asda does that, but I do know they do, obviously, sometimes Asda's the sort of place where, parents, people with mothers would like to work. So there's lots of contracts where it's 16 hours, 12 hours. And when I did work in supermarket in the past, you have short-hour contracts. They're not because the jobs are not full-time jobs. But you find that with lots of jobs now. There's lots of sort of short-hour jobs just to cover what the business needs. But it makes people's lives very insecure, and you can't plan for the future.
So were you saying that when you became, for want of a better word, a victim of sanctions, were you able to fall back on friends and family to help you? Or?
When I was sanctioned, and basically sanctions is punitive. It's about punishing people. I mean, even a criminal sort of in jail would get fed, and when you're sanctioned, you're basically skipping meals, so you're seen as almost like a criminal type. But luckily for myself, and this is why I got sympathy for lots of other people who perhaps haven't got the family support. I did have family around me who gave me vegetables, meat sometimes, fed me, and gave us occasional cash as well, just to help us out. But I was basically getting into debt, and the debt was getting worse.
So how did you cope with that? How did it make you feel? What impact did that have on your life?
It makes you feel. First of all, you do feel as if you've done something wrong, as if you're a criminal. Especially when I lost my internet service and I couldn't look for a job. The fact that was given to a credit agency also was like I felt like a criminal. I'm in debt. You owe money. You've done something wrong. So you feel quite bad about yourself, but then it started changing where I started resenting. I felt resentment towards government policy, even politicians generally who spoke about, or papers who spoke about the unemployed as if they were, some sort of scum of the earth.
In terms of the kind of, I suppose, you call the culture of Ashington, it's so different from when there was almost full employment here from the mines. So what impact do you think that's had generally on the community?
I think because the change from the very thriving mining town, and when there was a surplus of money and people had cash to spend, to today there is definitely a feeling of sort of loss, but also despair. I don't think it's all bad. I think there's a lot of people, to look around this place. I mean, we've talked about this before, but there's a lot of beautiful areas. It's actually a really nice place to live. So I don't want to colour this all in a very sort of dark way, but I do think there is a great loss, and a loss in the sense of because people have lost that sort of extra cash to spend, it has a spiralling effect. I mean, the whole thing about the mines being closed, that would have an effect on other businesses. It's not just mining, it's about local businesses, and it extends beyond there. The other places around the northeast that people will not spend money because they don't have it anymore is going to be affected. So it's not simply an isolated one town or 2 or 3 mining towns. It's about the whole of Northumberland or the whole of the northeast. And I think we can see that in Ashington. I think that despair can be easily photographed in the sense you photograph the street, the main street. You see all the for sale signs, all the charity shops, so many bookmakers, and also pawn shops, which is quite sort of sad. It paints a picture of what the town is now compared to how it was thriving shops. People, instead of going out on the square, they'd go up the street and buy their Christmas presents.
And yet there's a bit of a conundrum there, because we've just driven around the surrounding areas of Ashington. There's some beautiful places. There's not much employment, but it's actually a gorgeous place to live.
Yeah, Ashington's a very nice place to live. And I think one of the dangers of talking about the economy, people then assume that because it's a deprived place when it comes to the economy and there's no jobs, that they get this mental picture that it's some sort of really depressed town where all the houses are falling to bits or empty, and it's not like that at all. There's a lot of positivity, and the Ashington people are very sort of strong-willed, very vibrant when it comes to community. Very sort of there's that sense of solidarity still.
You've spent 18 months of your life, maybe more, doing Skype calls to Australia, speaking to Mary, talking to Matt, being interviewed. You've been over to Australia, the Australians have been over here. Have you got any kind of summing up thoughts about the project and whether it's changed your view of things?
On a personal level, I would say the project has definitely changed my views in several ways. I wouldn't say it necessarily changed all my views. One view was awakened that I sort of had years ago. I couldn't understand. I never could grasp when I was about 18, 19, the idea of ownership, how people can own coal on the ground and it belongs to them and they make profit out of it. I just do not grasp that whole idea. I just do not believe that ownership, I never did believe that ownership was necessarily the right way to do things. And I think I've become so engrossed in my own society and doing my own things, I'd forgotten about it. And meeting the Aborigines and their idea of stewardship and that you can't own the land, woke that thought back up to me again, reminded me of what seemed to me a logical sort of way to run a country or a planet, that people should own the land.
So would you say it's true then that your visit to Australia in a way has changed your view of your community?
Oh, definitely. I think visiting Australia has changed my views. It certainly brought some of the things that lain dormant in me, in my way of thinking. It's brought them back and reawakened those. But it's also made us realise that you can't just sit around and think, well, we'll have to just put up with this. We've got to go out and do something. But I think that doing things is perhaps very small things, even if it's just certain things in the community, helping other people, discussing things, sharing ideas, and trying to change the world around us. Because if we don't, I don't know who else is, or will allow people to do it in a way that will not suit or help people in the locality.
Do you think that there are indeed similarities between the Ashington communities and the Aboriginal communities?
I think there's definite similarities. I think the ideas of certainly how they've experienced things, the way they've been exploited, I certainly feel there's a definite link between their exploitation, although quite severe and different in its nature. There's still exploitation where people were expected to go down the pit. They worked in very dangerous conditions. They could have been helped a lot more, and there could have been a lot more. And it wasn't until unions were really strong and they fought for these health and safety issues and different developments in the pits, like bigger pits, higher ceilings. I think that is the same for me, seeing men exploited and seeing people as a vehicle of the economy as well. I see Aborigines have been talked about. When I visited Brisbane, Tony Abbott just said something along the lines that we will no longer subsidise somebody's lifestyle choices, as if Aborigines weren't contributing anyway. And it's this idea that, well, you're not the workers we want you to be, as if work was the only thing that made a human being. And I think very much, we live in a country where if you're not working, hence the idea about sanctioning, you're not a worker, so then you're nobody. And yet people are so multifaceted and got so much to give, and so many other aspects of them that are really interesting. And just seeing and listen to other miners who talk about their lives and the things they had, about how much their culture and society mattered to them, which was beyond work, and the solidarity in the community and how people deal with each other in the community. That was more important than actually the work. Yet that's disregarded.